Alright, well, back on track. Alright, well this is the patch 11.19 rundown, and the big thing to talk about here is this is the Worlds patch. This is the patch where the Reckoning Championship will be played on. And so we're trying to open up a bunch of new builds, try to make sure as much is playable as possible, open up some big carries, and so there's some interesting changes in here, but hopefully should lead to a very interesting Worlds patch, right, Ken?
Yeah, throughout the patch you just see a bunch of like small nudges to 3-star units or small changes here and there to these units that can hopefully serve as different carries in different comps. So like if you really master, I don't know, like a Fed comp and you really want to make this fun, you should be rewarded for that, and that should be able to take you farther. We're not aiming to make every single comp like an S tier comp, but we're making every comp strong and playable, and you know, something that you can win with in the meta.
Yeah. All right, let's dive right in. All right. First off, on the system change side, we are lowering the chances of a Tome of Trace dropping from a gold orb by about 40%. We like the Tome of Trace. We think it's a great thing to have. It's a cool high moment out of those gold orbs. It was happening a little more often than we were comfortable with, now that people are kind of used to the item. So we're going to put it back down to a little bit more reasonable state.
Yeah, I smiled because I just can imagine Milk reacting to this, because he always complains about the tome. Oh my god, you got free tome. But like, we're reducing it. Also, it's not free, but, you know, we're reducing it. It should be healthy for the game because it still remains like a super high moment. You don't see like a bunch of people doing that.
Yep. Yeah. We also removed the 2 Reforgers plus 5 gold part of the Radiant Blessing table. Go look up the full table. That part of the table is gone. The real reason is, I mean, getting 2 Reforgers just inherently kind of feels weird. It's not a bad thing. It's weird, especially if a lot of the time you don't need it. And this combined with one of the other drops on the table could lead to a 3 Reforger plus 5 gold moment, which felt really weird. So we agreed that just felt weird, so we're just taking it out.
Yeah, I think it did have some like fun moment where like you get something from Dragon, you can Reforge it twice and like shuffle your item and see like what you can get something good out of this. But like for the most part, it's, you know, 2 Reforgers really sitting on your bench and you have a third, and it just feels really bad to have these like 3 things that you don't want to use sitting on your bench. So we took it out.
Cool. Alright, on the trait side, Skirmishers continue to be this really awkward comp that, frankly, I don't, like we've said before, I don't think we're ever going to get this quite right. Because, again, 6 Skirmisher at 3-1, insanely powerful, falls off the cliff. But we are going to give 6 Skirmisher a little bit of a buff here. Hopefully make the Skirmisher stat a little more appealing. So they're going to get bigger shield at the start of combat, 40 to 50. Yeah,
reroll Skirmishers becomes a little bit better.
Ready, Hammer?
General.
Give me a target.
Yep. Cool. Okay, Tristana. Why don't you talk about the Tristana rework?
Yeah. So Tristana, once she's in a good spot, she's like able to. It was optimized where like, you know, you could backline all your units. Tristana jumps into the backline into complete safety and just like assassinates things. And it felt really bad to play against. It felt like there was no counterplay. And so when she's nerfed from that state, though, she jumps in there. She doesn't kill things, and things turn around. She carries them around the killer, and so, like, it was very, you know, really good or really crappy. And get her to like the part of her that felt like there was no counterplay, and but while keeping her like identity and maintaining the fun. So now she just leaps away from enemies whenever she gets full mana, and then gains that active steroid. And we're also giving her, like, allowing her to do this jump a little bit faster into the fight, and also giving her some AD. And so the idea here is that she's like the slippery, you know, Hellion that like jumps away to safety and continues to like DPS people down, and can sometimes drop aggro because she jumps away from whatever danger's in your face.
Yep, should be a little bit more interesting. Hopefully can be a more viable carry. I think Tristana is the one champ that I'm not really happy with 5.5. Like, when we did that V patch, we kind of over-nerfed her into unplayability. I've been saying our goal for this half of the set has been to avoid that balanced thrash. So hopefully this brings Tristana back into the meta in a healthy way, though, so it's like you can actually have a backline against Tristana.
Yeah, and just also to add on to this, we got 6 last patch, so like that is also stacked on top of the Tristana buff that was 6-ray Helen, Tristana comp, got no power back over the last patches.
Thresh. Thresh is being nerfed specifically because Iniko asked 3,428 times. No, but really, but really, the thing with Thresh is, like, we're fine with this hook champion, you know, casting into the fight, and you have to position around it. The problem was, especially with a 3-star Thresh, this guy would cast 2, sometimes 3, even 4 times the fight. And that was a little more than we're comfortable with, so we are doing a pretty big nerf here. Thresh is still going to cast pretty early into the fight, get that 1 strong hook. But after that, if you want that second one, you're going to have to really invest in Thresh.
Yeah, we were seeing multi-casts from Thresh, especially in the Ironclad Knights comp. He just takes damage and casts and takes damage and casts, and so we're specifically hitting that iteration of that like version of Thresh, because like in a Forgotten comp, he's a lot more squishy. He'll get 1 cast off, and he still gets that 1 cast in 40 mana. So that shouldn't change much.
Cool. All right, Ashe. Draconic has been a little too hard to play for our liking. We want Draconic to be a little underpowered, so that, you know, you get the eggs and you can ramp up. But Ashe was just really feeling like a bit of a wasted champion. Wasn't living up to that fantasy, even for a Draconic. So we're gonna give Ashe 10 AD, which is a pretty big buff. But again, this should help the Ranger comp a bit, which also is low. And then again, Draconic Ashe getting out of the block. Like, maybe you can actually play this in the early game and it's okay. So this should open up some options here.
Yeah, Ashe was just doing too little DPS, so this brings her back up. And I also just want to call out the Ranger comp that you mentioned. It's like 4 Ranger, multiplies this AD by a lot for really high DPS. So like this is actually a meaningful buff, especially for 2-starter or Draconic to be 3-starter. So it's like supportive DPS basically for your other Rangers.
Yep. Agreed. All right, let's talk about the Draven work. So, with Draven, what we always felt was he always felt like he needed 4 items, right? Like you wanted RFC, so he didn't have to move as much and juggle his axes. You needed BT, so he wouldn't just die, and he could heal back up. You wanted Deathblade or Infinity Edge, so that you could get some big damage. And it felt like you needed Last Whisper, so that you can get through because you're front to back. And all of that kind of led to this point where, like, you always felt like you were missing one thing. And we talked about this before, that we want Draven to retain the identity of this 3-range, risky, but high DPS. We want Draven to be like the best single target DPSer in the game, with big numbers, big crits. That's what Draven's supposed to feel like. So what we've given him is we've decided that, you know, maybe he doesn't need Last Whisper, or if anything, like his new identity is he can really cut through that front line. And so now Draven passively ignores 50% of his target's armor. Now I want to be clear, this is different than Last Whisper. This is, he ignores their current armor, which means, let's say for example you're running Draven and Akshan. Akshan can hit the target, lower their armor from let's say 200 to 100, and then Draven is going to ignore half of that, so Draven is hitting a 50 armor target, while the rest of his team is still hitting a 100 armor target. So this is a pretty unique buff for Draven. Now, obviously, to compensate, we kind of had to pull back on his spell and base AD. So he loses some AD, loses some base spell damage, loses some percent AD on his spell. But overall, this is a pretty big buff. And again, allows Draven to not get stuck on Ironclad as hard, not get stuck on that Galio. So I think this gives Draven a pretty unique identity and should be exciting.
Yeah, like net, you know, with all the numbers net, it should actually be a meaningful buff to Draven, especially because now that he doesn't need to build Last Whisper, he can build further damage multiplication. And so, you know, to solve whatever need you want to multiply your damage more, you want healing, you want whatever you can build. It just opens up that third slot for itemization, which can multiply damage with really big numbers. So it's exciting, and it's a pretty big buff overall, but we had to tune down his damage to compensate for this extra slot that we have in the bottom.
Yep. TLDR, nothing stops Draven now.
Yeah. Oh, and just also he can use Last Whisper himself if you want.
Yeah, it's true.
I wouldn't recommend it, but you know, yeah, you mentioned the auction thing. You can still build the item. He's not locked out of it.
The crazy thing is, like, you're fighting a 40 armor target. You use Last Whisper, they're down to, what's that math, 12? And then he ignores half of that, so 6? Like, giving him a Last Whisper does mean he's doing close to true damage on a low armor target.
Yeah, but then it feels like the passive ignoring armor is like getting really low value, but like, so, you know, it's not optimal, but it's something you can do.
Yeah.
Still, I know it's pretty good.
Cool. Draven.
Yeah, great.
Alright, Heimerdinger. Heimerdinger actually, like, when you can get Heimerdinger online, is quite strong. Like, he's still fine. But the combination of the change in the meta, the amount of Banshee claws you see around it nowadays, and everything really kind of have knocked him down just a little bit. So we decided to kind of shift his power. We want to shift it out of the turret, because the turret AD isn't really something we appreciate. And we're going to let him cast a little more often again. This puts his cast back to where he was before the last nerf, but taking the power out of that turret AD. So his total DPS might only go up a tiny bit, but it should be in a more appreciable area with that.
Yeah, and also this also kind of narrows the gap between Archangel Heimerdinger and non-Archangel Heimerdinger, because he has a lower max mana, which means he gets less AP from that item. So like if you had Death Cap instead of Archangel, you'll still feel strong. You don't feel completely tied to the Archangel item, basically. So it should, this is kind of like a way for us to buff him in a way that also targets that interaction.
Yep. Cool. Okay, why don't you talk about Zerat Portal?
Okay, yeah, this is exciting stuff. Okay, so Zerat Portal, or Zerat Portal, it's really struggled to find its place in this set. It's kind of like lacking a clear purpose of when you can build this, and the spawn is like the frontline, but you know, the taunt wasn't really like used meaningfully in this set, and so we've changed it so that this can now taunt assassins. So like, and this can taunt assassins, and the hex range has grown up a lot. So this is basically the item that says, hey, I want my unit to be targeted by everyone on the board. Yeah. I'm not very sure, but that's kind of the goal here. It's supposed to be like the taunt item, and at the end it'll give you more frontline because the Zerat Void Spawn will taunt again. And the taunt is a little bit unique in that, like, in the past, if you've played in previous sets, sometimes like the taunt causes units to walk and tap out weirdly. That shouldn't happen anymore. So like the new taunt is basically saying, if you can attack from where you are, you will attack the unit that taunted you. And so like, for example, if there's an Aphelios in the corner and there's a Galio on your front line, you put Galio with Zerat Portal, the Aphelios will start the game and be taunted by your Galio and will target the Galio, even if there's someone close to you. This is also going to be with taunt assassin, so like, you have to know where the assassins will jump, because the assassins won't like path over to you. But if they all jump onto this unit with Zerat Portal, they're all going to target that unit, and if the unit walks forward, they will follow that unit forward. So like, if you place this properly, you'll be able to taunt assassins, and it should create more counterplay to that.
Yeah, the big thing here that I want to talk about, you already talked about it in detail, so I won't go too deep, is again, taunt kind of changed here. Taunt is now, hey you, if you're in range, attack me. If not, don't worry about it. None of the like force passing that happened before, none of the awkward jank. And so that's what we mean by being able to place it in the right spot, right? If you have a Nocturne in melee range, Zerat says, attack me now. And so I think this is going to be a really interesting item. This is probably the biggest change of the patch, to be honest. But I also think it's a healthy change. I think this item will be a lot of fun. So pretty excited for that.
Yeah.
And then Spear of Shojin, honestly, we should have done this buff 2 patches ago. We kept missing our localization deadline, and just kept missing it. But the reality is, Spear of Shojin is, I think, the most underperforming Radiant item. And so we're giving it a Radiant bonus of 20 AP, buffing it up. That's one of the cool things about these Radiant items, is we can just buff the item, give it a snap. I think this will also buff a lot of the AP comps out there. This is a buff to Velkoz, this is a buff to Heimerdinger, this is a buff to Karma, this is a buff to Teemo. Like, there's a bunch of options out there, and so, yeah.
Yeah, in general, this is, you know, to open up more itemization options for AP comps. You get a Radiant Armory, and you don't just take this just for mana, you can take it for mana, plus you get some damage, so, you know, Heimerdinger.
Yep. On to small changes, A-Bomb 4 and 5, no one ever built this yet. They're just not really worth it compared to A-Bomb 3. Making it more worth it. They get more stats. And then Cannoneer 4, same thing. Cannoneer 4 isn't really dived deep into, but now if you want to invest in Cannoneer 4, things will blow up quicker. Makes Cannoneer spats a little more attractive, blow stuff up.
Yep, nothing really else to add here.
Cool. On the small side, Kled, we're just giving Kled a small nudge up, trying to open up some more build possibilities here. So Kled's 3, maybe a little bit better. I don't think he's going to be S tier, but there you go. Same with Udyr, same thing. Gets a little bit bigger spell shield if you want to 3-star your Udyr. Buffs Draconic comps a little bit, who happen to hit for 3-star Udyr. They're going to make that small buff. And then Leona. You know, I feel bad about this nerf, but like, the reality is a 1-cost being a super tank can't be killed with a super tank item. Just really isn't acceptable to the level that Leona's able to do it. So we are nerfing her 3-star spell quite a bit. Should still be good. Like 120 reduction after mitigation is still decent, but like the champ needs to die sometimes.
Yep. She gets a lot of different damage reduction with armor. She has Knight, and then she has the spell. So she, a 1-cost being that tanky was terrifying. So this could make it so that just like be on the corner, decent damage other than that. It should be good. It is a pretty hard though. And then on the Kled one, you know, Kled is still a really good unit right now, but like he falls off kind of off a cliff at a certain stage in the game, and so this is just to slow that fall off a little bit so that, you know, if you invest into Kled, you can have fun with him for a little longer. Set 3 gets a small buff here. Now you might notice, hey, Ashe buff, Udyr 3 buff, Set 3 buff. The interesting thing is, because it is just 3 stars, I don't think this really makes the path of Draconic that much easier. But hey, if you reach some of those endpoints, comp might be a little bit better. And then Soraka. Soraka builds are fun, but they're just kind of underperforming a little bit, so we're just giving her plus 25 damage across the board. Should be a little nudge to Soraka, maybe open up some Renewer builds, some Soraka builds. Again, nothing crazy here, just light tap. One punch set is back? Is that what this slide is saying?
I don't know about that one.
So basically, like, we want to make sure that, like, Set, we don't want Set to be, like, walking to the back line and one-shotting everything. But, like, we should meaningfully throughout the front line so that we're other units can dash and burn through them. And still keep in mind that, like, there's 40 on our side and dash. Like, 40, 80, and a lot.
Alright. Misfortune. Honestly, looking at this patch overall, this is one of the buffs. I'm the one who put it in, so if it ever goes bad, blame me on this one. But I do feel like Misfortune is a little too dependent on mana items, and so this is to let her get one cast off, to try to let her be a little bit more impactful early on to the fight, especially if she doesn't have mana items. And so hopefully this should be just a nudge to the Misfortune comp, or even just her as a utility for Forgotten. That should be fairly healthy without overbuffing. And then Nidalee and Riven both get a very, very, very tiny bump at 3-star. I mean, if you look at these numbers are tiny because we don't think they're far off, but they do need a little bit of a nudge compared to
one of the Misfortune ones, it's on cover with the 10 and Neo on, one Fortune, you know, some of the things back to the numbers were enough. Like there are other things that we're touching within the same comp that is often played with her that should make her stronger. Just wanted to add that part.
Karma continues to be a champ that she's strong in the right conditions, but those conditions are very hard to pull off. A lot of people are really struggling with her. We do still want her to be a carry, so again, we're going to give her 50 HP, so she'll be a little bit more survivable. And we're just buffing the 2-star 10 damage. Again, Karma does a lot of damage, so we're not really worried about that, and honestly, we can't go any higher than this. This is already a little nutty to me, to be honest. But this should make Karma just a little bit easier to use if she doesn't have literally the perfect items.
Yeah, I agree. I think nothing else to add on this slide.
Cool. Garen. Garen Victorious is fun. And so this should incentivize you to try to actually build damage Garen. Get that death cap. Make Garen hit hard. We want to see carry Garen at the Worlds. So let's see some carry Garen.
Yeah, honestly, this is a lot of damage. So if you see this damage, like you see Garen kill something and then jump into the next thing, you'll be like, holy crap, that's a lot of damage. So like, don't sleep on this trait. you know, you can take advantage of it. You don't even need to like 3-atomize Garen to take advantage of it. You can just have a 1 damage enemy Garen, and it should be able to do like decent work.
Yeah, I think I'll call it now. Death Tap, Hodge, Tank.
Warmog or something?
Warmog, Ram, I don't care. I don't care what the tank guy has. Yeah.
Maybe not Hodge. I can see like Death Tap.
No, Hodge for the victorious light shield. Get him back up.
Ah, huge lifesteal. Or a huge on the life. Alright, let's see it. Whirl.
Yep. Alright, and then that's basically it. The only two other things to talk about for our mobile players. We are changing the tutorials. Before, every tutorial had to be updated every set. So like Galaxies was out, here's the Galaxies tutorial. Base was out, here's the Base tutorial. Now we just have the tutorial. It will stay around forever. We called it the sustainable tutorial. Skip and the team worked really hard on this. It's actually pretty fun. There's a rehashed noble that if you get all 6 pieces, it summons a giant Galio that instantly destroys the team. It's pretty hilarious.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So it's a tutorial to help with our mobile onboarding. Maybe someday we'll bring and then Ranger toolkit got updated to show the fact that it actually increases your whole attack speed, not just from your base attack.
Yeah, and there were some like player pains around like, you know, it wasn't clear that it turns on and off, and so like it should clearly state that it turns on and off, and it also multiplies your total attack speed, not your base attack speed. So it's not just an attack speed bonus. So that, you know, if you get your attack speed up in other ways, it'll multiply by 1.8. I think 180%.
I have to focus, but
yeah,
I can't stop smiling.
It should be clear how that works now.
All right, well that's going to do it for the patch 11.18 rundown. I know I'm excited because, again, this is the last patch. This is the Reckoning Championship patch, so it should be really interesting to see how the competitors take all these changes and take them into the finals and be able to get them build. Ken, are you looking forward to anything for the championship?
Yeah, I think the meta like super like so far where like a lot of different things can do well, so I'm excited to see how like you know, what competitors bring, especially from all the different regions. I love when you see like different regions clash and like different metas, and like sometimes mid-tournament, you know, one region learns from another region, like step 4 Callista, and then they start, you know, using that a lot more.
Yeah, it should be good. All right, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Which region is winning?
I gotta give it to NA.
Oh my goodness, no way.
NA has to win something. NA
I
can't
have to
win.
focus, but I can't stop smiling.
All right, my safe bet is Korea. My long shot bet is Brazil.
Ooh, okay. I feel like all 3 of us happening.
I don't know. I mean, anyone could win. All right, that's gonna do it for us. That'll be it. Starting next patch, you should be some more interesting changes because we'll be free of the competitive scene. So who knows? But yeah. All right, that's gonna do it from us. Until next time, take it easy.
I believe in the future of dragonkind!
helpless fight, the hardened live. Imprisoned no longer. I have to focus, but I can't stop smiling.
This is a fragile species. Feels good to stretch my wings. This is a fragile species.
Imprisoned no longer.
Feels good to stretch my wings.